All right, welcome back, everybody. I got our special guest here, Ben, and is it Malisow? How do you pronounce that last name?
Malisow. Malisow.
Malisow, Ben Malisow, a legend in the CCSP world, and he's going to help us understand some of the things he's been doing, and also we've got a code here for a discount for your CCSP stuff. So let's do it. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for
Outstanding.
joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. I'm really glad to cooperate with you. I apologize. I'm gonna guess that a lot of the things I'm about to tell you, you've already heard from Larry. But sometimes it's really good to hear that as reinforcement and maybe add some veracity or credibility to what each other says. So instructors stick together. I'll do this very interactive. If you have any questions while I'm saying something, feel free to chime in with questions either via chat or via the audio, whatever you like. And then we can have questions afterwards too, and whatever you want to know, whatever I can help with, I will be glad to share. With that said, let's talk about CCSP and how you might want to approach it. First of all, yeah, thanks to Larry. Second of all, CCSP is no joke. A lot of folks come at this because CCSP was created after CISSP. A lot of people think, hey, I've got my CISSP certification. I can just go crack out CCSP, no problem, add another few letters after my name, and I'm good to go. While there is overlap between the certs, it is not simple, even if you already have some other certs under your belt. It's actually, I think, honestly, more challenging than CISSP, probably because it's a specialty cert. Also because we all know that ISC squared questions are written in a very oblique way. CCSP magnifies that, and I'll talk about that in just a moment too.
Um,
Um,
I was just going to say, for me, just to underscore your point, I do 4 classes, and CCSP has been my lowest passing rate.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it, and that's unfortunate, and I hope that we can improve on that. And I'm sure your classes do help improve the overall general population pass rate. So, the forewarned is forearmed for sure. As I said, there is huge overlap. Oh, sorry, I don't know what happened here. I think my PowerPoint is on a timer. Sorry about that. Depending on what version of the exam you get, and there are multiple versions in circulation at any given time, you might see between 30 to 60% overlap with CISSP. And you can understand that if you look at the exam outlines for both certs. You can see the topics that are hammered home in the same places over and over again. Obviously, CCSP is going to have a lot more cloud content, but that doesn't mean that CISSP is devoid of cloud content, and so forth. So understand that, know that one does not replace the other, and there is some similarity.
It
All
almost
right,
seems
so
too that CCSP though is all new, like where CISSP still has a lot of legacy or very old, which might be good best practices, but they're not reflected. CCSP is all new knowledge.
yes, and that's indicative of the fact when it was created. I mean, you and me both have very old CISSPs. CCSP came around what, 2016, 2015. So necessarily the content is going to be much newer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, do I have to pass each domain, or if I get 70% overall, even if I tube one of the domains, can I still pass? And the answer is nobody knows, because ISC squared ain't telling us. We have asked that question directly over and over again to ISC squared, and they refuse to share with us the answer. So the simple way to approach this is don't fail any of the domains.
Just
Make
try to
sure
get them
you're,
all right.
yeah,
I
yeah.
get people a lot like that that come into my classes for years and saying, "Hey, so how many can I afford to get wrong?" And it's like, dude, don't work that way. No football coach starts the beginning of the season because now remember, there's 16 games. We could lose today. It's not a big deal. That's you try to get them all right.
Well, I'm not gonna naysay you, but on the other hand, it's okay if you look at the number of questions you get wrong as being within an acceptable limit, it's a good way to stop from panicking during the
Oh
exam.
yeah, you never want to panic. You never want
Yeah,
to panic.
yeah. And that happened to me when I was taking it. I'm not sure if I have this in my notes here, but I was getting 5 questions in a row wrong on the exam, and I knew they were wrong. Not that the exam told me, I just knew it.
You're like, I
And
don't know this.
I started to freak out. And I got up and I went to the men's room and I splashed some cold water on my face and I stared in the mirror and breathed a bit. And then I went back and I sat down, and there's a Java calculator built into the testing format. And I said, okay, what is 70% of 125 questions? And I figured out, hey, I can get 45 questions wrong. Hey, that, it took a lot of the pressure off. 5 wrong, no problem. And that kind of reinvigorated me, and it made me feel a lot better for the rest of the exam. So I'm not telling you to go in and fail. I'm with Larry here, but
Yeah,
other than the Vince Lombardi thing, know that the minimum wouldn't be the minimum if it wasn't good enough. Okay, 70% is your target. Yeah, okay. And Joe, exactly. It just you have to take that, roll with it, and don't let it get you down. All right. Now, CCSP is not an adaptive test. It's a straightforward multiple choice test where each question is presented and then it goes to the next question, the next question. None of the subsequent questions have any dependencies on any of the earlier answers that you've given. However, to make it similar to CISSP and the adaptive exam, as of 2 years ago, ISC Squared said you will not be allowed to go back and review earlier questions and earlier answers. Once you pick your answer and click the submit button, you go to the next question and you will never see that question that you submitted on ever again. You can't go back, change your answers. You can't do a last minute review after you've answered every question. It is straight progress. I don't know about you. I kind of don't like that because I like to review my stuff, even though I know that scientifically you are more likely to change a correct answer to a wrong answer than you are to fix a wrong answer and make it correct. I still liked having that tool in my toolkit, but I just want you to be.
I'm so with you. I used to tell people it's like when you review your answers, if you go, wait a second, now that I know that question 34 is this, question 5 needs to be that. That's different. But if you go, I'm looking at my review and I go, I don't know, but 10 C's in a row, that doesn't look right. Don't do that. Don't change anything.
Exactly. All you do is end up doubting yourself, second guessing, and picking the wrong thing after you pick the right thing. Yeah. You're absolutely correct. All right. So most of the questions you'll see are going to be like this. Almost all of them will be like this. It'll have a question. It'll have 4 answers. And of those 4, only one is going to get you some points, even though all 4 might be true. For instance, on this question, what kind of questions be on the exam? Some are going to be short, some are going to be long, some are going to be silly, some are going to be hard. And some are both silly, hard, and short, and some are both silly, hard, and long. What ISC Squared wants you to do is pick the most best or least worst. And that can be really frustrating because sometimes, especially for those of us who've been in the field for a while and have the gray hairs in our beards, me and Larry, it comes down to what appears to be a matter of professional opinion, not a hard and fast, bright line distinction between which answer is going to be correct. So that makes it really tough to answer. Be aware of that. Be prepared for that. The practice questions you'll see, including my own, rarely hit that level of ambiguity. So you will not have a lot of practice before you go sit for the exam as to what the exam's actually going to contain. So for any cert exam, the most important advice I can offer is RTFQ. Now, does anyone here know what RTFQ stands for?
I could only assume Q is question.
Very good. Very good. Any ex-military? Yes, it's like RTFM. Very good. It stands for read the full question.
Full question. The full question. There we go.
Read the full question. And this is so important because when you are in a test, you've got that Yeah, right, Troy. Yeah, when you read my books, I use the other word. Yeah. Uh, uh, when you're in the testing process, you've got that level of anxiety, you got the adrenaline, you're trying to rush through it. You know, you got the timer, you see the timer counting down. You don't want to, take up too much of your time on your exam. And it's real easy to go fast. It's real easy to go fast and be wrong. So what you want to do is you want to read the question. You want to read the question twice. You want to read each answer. You want to read each answer twice. Don't pick the first one that you run across that sounds correct. Make sure you read all four of them and then read all four of them again, because it's real important to understand what the question is asking in order to pick that correct answer. Very, very essential.
Yeah, I like to. I tell students skim the question and skim the answers, because then you'll know when I reread that question the type of the four choices I have. So let me go back and reread it with a fine tooth comb. Now that you know all four answers have to do with recovery time objective, let's go back in there. And see what's
I
going on.
like that. That's also a great approach. That
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense too.
but,
You might
but
even want to read the answers before reading the question.
well, I was
And
just
then
going to
that way
say
it's not going to bias you towards a certain direction. I like that as well.
my students have already seen me though make the mistake that you were just trying to prevent them from making, where I've been going through exams and I quickly pick something. I go, oh, I didn't read the full thing. It says which is not, and he did this, and you've left that last part, and they want that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and I got a note about that coming up too. These are long exams, so finding blocks of time to arrange them at the Pearson VUE Testing Center, depending on where you live, can be difficult to plan. So if, like, for instance, if you're thinking about taking the exam 30 days from now or 6 weeks from now, go and schedule it. You can always reschedule, and I think there's a rescheduling fee, but you don't want to wait till you're finally ready, you've done all your studying, you go to schedule the exam, and then they don't have an open block until 2 months from now. That's really grinding, and you can lose a lot of the stuff that's fresh in your memory from your studies or from taking Larry's class. Don't do that to yourself. All right, and this is what Larry was just talking about, I think. There are certain discriminators in the questions that boil down to one word or one
Changed
phrase,
everything.
and it changes the whole thing, the entire outcome. Words like except, most, least, never, instead, those are modifiers that just take you in the completely wrong direction. That's why you slow down and RTFQ. Very, very, very important. Look for those words. All right. I'm sure Larry's talked about this as well. The way the questions are written is awful because they're written by committee and they're reviewed by another committee and they're put through a bureaucratic process before they're fielded in the exam itself. And I'm sorry, this has CISSP, but it's true for CCSP as well. Most of these questions are almost English tests.
I say it all the time.
It's grammar, it's sentence structure. It has very little to do with assessing whether you have the technical knowledge or the practical capability. If you're a non-native English speaker, bear that in mind and really, really bear down on the fundamentals and the essentials, because you're going to be abused by the way that the questions are constructed. You may also want to consider taking the exam in your native language if it is offered in your native language, because the neat part about the foreign language exams, even though they're longer and even though there's a much longer duration as well, you can switch to English for each and every question and then back to your native English. Back to your native language.
I did not know that in the middle of the test.
Yep.
Because they did Japanese was first. I believe that was the first one.
I'm
for
not
CISSP. For CIA. I'm sorry.
It may be. Yeah.
Oh,
and there aren't as many different languages for CCSP, but it is something you can do for any of the ISC squared exams. And when I learned that, it was mostly my German students who were telling me that. They would flip back and forth just to see which words changed and
Sure.
what meaning might be reflected there. I recommend that highly.
Someone
There's a
we
question in the
got a
chat.
statement. Yeah, someone who has been on the committee to create. It isn't worded poorly by design.
Oh no,
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. I
and
agree.
that's not what I meant. What I meant was anytime you bring five people together to accomplish a given task, you're going to necessarily end up with a giraffe instead of a horse. Only because you have to deal with five different personalities, five different approaches, five different professional opinions. Not that I'm not suggesting that the test makers are going out to confuse people or to muddy the waters, but simply that having multiple heads working on a single thing is going to complicate the issue. And I'd love to hear your uh, experience about the question making process. I don't want you to disclose anything from test security, but did you find it rewarding? Did you think that it was a good experience? Was it worth the CPEs? I think they give out what 24 CPEs, right?
21. I thought it was actually an eye-opening experience because I've heard the exact same thing. Where you go to some of these courses and the questions they all suck, and I'm like, how did this get that bad? And the first thing I did learn was that every question and every answer is sourced back to a book that is not a study guide. Because so many people will say, oh, this study guide is the best, or that study guide is the best. And the reality is, study guides are good, but there's no study guide that any questions are built from.
That's great. I mean, I would hope they should be from like RFCs or an ISO standard or an
Yep.
actual law.
All that stuff is fair game, but they actually will give you a subscription to O'Reilly Books, and that gives you like 10,000 books to choose from. And as long as it's relatively recent, yeah, you have a documented source, they will take that question and that exam and use that as for consideration. So that was my biggest takeaway from the session.
Outstanding. Thanks for sharing that. Can I ask you, when you say not study guides, does that include the official ISC squared study guide and CBK?
It does.
So they can't even use their own material in
I
making
Correct.
the.
I
That's
knew that was the
cool.
case. I knew that was
Yep.
the case. In fact,
That's
I
great.
tend to say that the test was written first, and then somebody's hired write a book that covers this stuff.
So basically, yeah, there's a Chinese wall between the test department and the education department, which is why you find some really weird answers and really weird questions because whomever wrote the official guide didn't actually know the test itself. They were just going by the same thing like everybody else was going by the objectives and trying to answer them as best they could.
Yeah,
And
and
I've been
and that's
guessing
really
that. Yeah.
important is because like when I wrote the study guide, the first and second edition for the CCSP, I wasn't allowed to talk to the people who wrote the exam outline to try to get interpretation of certain topic lines that were unclear. In order
Yep.
to even pass a question along, I had to pass it through an intermediary. They would take it to the outline committee. The outline committee would give the intermediary the answer, and then the intermediary would bring me the answer. And there's good reason for that. They could lose their ANSI accreditation if they cross-pollinated between test prep and test delivery. So I get
Yep.
that. I totally get that. But it does make it really complicated because if the topic says firewall, then my question is, do you mean all firewalls? Do you mean stateful inspection? Do you mean
Personal.
host-based? What is it that you're asking here? What is it that we should be teaching the students? And it was very difficult to suss those things out. But thank you.
And
That's fascinating.
and like you said, it is that ANSI accreditation requirement, which is why they had that delineation, which
17024. Yeah.
for better or for worse, and again, it's not just CISSP, it's the same with CC and
It,
SSCP. So the official study material is rarely enough to just use that resource to prepare.
That's
So
awesome. I just want to say that your name is Def, not a CSP, but you use the phrase "there's a Chinese wall model" between them, and I love the application of the term. It's great.
Brewer Nash, no conflict
The
of
old
interest.
brewer Nash.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Troy, yeah.
I understand that
Yeah,
term actually came from Lloyd's of London Insurance.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah, Troy, I want to say this, and I'm sure Larry has said this again, but I just want to reinforce it. Never sole source any studying. I like my material, but you know what? Even I tell my students, go read somebody else's book too. Don't just take my course. Don't just read my book. Go to Larry's course, go to Mike's course, go to Prab or Prashant or Gwen. Make sure you're getting a lot of different inputs and a lot of different perspectives, because any individual can't tell you the whole shape of the thing. And we're all going to have our own different strengths and weaknesses. So you want to cover as much and as broad as possible. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I get
Much
on summarize on that. I have people saying, "Is this the only class I need to? Is this all I need to pass the exam?" And I go, "I don't even know who you are. For all I know, you could pass it without me. You might be ready now." I hope that I'm here and I'm providing useful stuff. That's all.
and I appreciate what they're asking, because some of the stuff is so expensive.
Sure,
Some of the books cost as much as the first insurance payment I ever paid for my first car. I mean, these things are not cheap, and I don't want to sell somebody something that's not going to be useful to them. On the other hand, if this is such an investment in your career and in yourself, and if you're already spending $700 on the exam, take your time, save up, get as many study resources as you can, and do it methodically. Don't half-ass it, and don't just, go with one provider. That's not the way to do it. Okay. Yes, exactly, Lolita. I totally agree. When I was writing that course material, I actually did that myself. As I went out and I looked at different sources. I looked at what Cisco said, and I looked at what NIST said, and I looked at ISO, and some of them had some conflicting definitions, and that helped me boil it down to its essence. What do they all agree that this thing has? What actually is a CASB? And getting the more input is definitely more useful than just copy and pasting one person's concept of something. Totally agree. Totally agree. All right, now this is a really good one, and I got this from one of my students. Remember how I said that you should try not to pick the first answer that you run across that might be good? Order bias can mess you up when you're doing this, and that happens if you read from A to D. You're more prone to give more weight to answer A or B than you are to C or D. We have an innate distance psychologically from the last thing we see or the last thing on a list. We give primacy to the first thing on the list. So instead, I suggest you read your you read your answers from D to A. Just do that. Just do that even during the practice exams, and you'll see how much that changes your score. See how much it changes your outlook about what it is you're seeing. I got that advice from a student. I think it's phenomenal. I give it to all my other students.
Many students have told me that that's their preference. I just say whatever helps you ensure that you read everything.
Agreed. All right, this is a big one, and this is true for both CISSP and for CCSP, not for SSCP or CC, but for the two big ones, this is true. We're not asking you to fix a technical problem on the exam. We're not asking you to be the troubleshooter. We're asking you to be the manager. Most of the answers are going to be based on policy, strategy, directive, money, and business goals, not about how to fix a problem. And this is tough for a lot of us, especially those of us who have like 20 years. We're so used to, if it's a nail, hit it with a hammer. That's not what you're being asked on these exams. You're going to have to change your perspective. I like Luke Ahmed's book. I know it's for CISSP. He is writing some stuff for CCSP. Yeah. Think like a manager. And that's definitely what you want to do. Make sure you get into that mindset before you go sit for the exam.
I got to finally meet him and see him without his mask. I gave a talk in DC a couple weeks ago, and he's sitting in the audience. The guy, he goes, "Hey, Larry," and he said, "Come here." And I was like, he goes, "You know me." And for something in his voice, I said, "Luke." And I was like, oh my gosh.
I'm
Oh my
so
gosh.
jealous. I am so jealous. I've invited him on my podcast several times. He was one of the tech reviewers of my CCSP course, and I can't thank him enough for that. He's fantastic.
He's great.
But I've never met him in person. You're one up on me there, brother.
Well, on this business perspective, this is what I tell my students. Remember, you're the waiter, you're not the cook. Too many of my students are subject matter experts, and they tried, as you say, hit that nail. And I'm like, no, you're just listening to the managers and trying to understand what they're saying, so you could technically direct them. You know?
I have one of my colleagues on my podcast regularly, Matt Snoddy, is a digital forensics guy, and he recently went and got his CISSP, and he said, the CISSP is not the person who picks up the screwdriver and goes and turns the screw. The CISSP is, when there's the screw loose, goes and writes the policy, which says we need to make a process of how to get the screwdriver and fix loose screws. That's a whole different order of magnitude, if not 2 orders of magnitude, removed from doing field work. Yeah. And that rubs a lot of us the wrong way, but it is how you have to approach the exam.
Oh, wait, there's a thing here. Let me make sure I get the questions here. But the definition where by multiple stories. Okay. Can the questions be asked from, I found this true. So when I was taking my CCSP, and I've heard from other people, one of the challenges is you never know who you are.
Correct.
Am I an architect for the customer? Am I a service person for the cloud provider? And it was really hard.
It's one of the biggest pains in the ass with the exam outline, because the outline itself comes from both perspectives, and it doesn't have like a symbol or a color code that tells you this is from customer, this is from provider. It's a pain in the neck. I totally agree. Yes, the questions can be asked to both or either, and you have no way of knowing what they're asking for.
Yeah, and sometimes you're a developer, sometimes you're a legal counsel.
Yep. Yeah, sometimes you're a regulator. Sometimes you're a lawyer. Yeah, yep, yeah. Let's see. Oh, yeah. You paid for the time. Use it. Don't go fast. When I took the CISSP, it was 6 hours long. We did it with a number 2 pencil on a Scantron form. I'm not making that up.
No. What year? What year?
1999.
Oh,
or 2000.
I was 2001, and that's what it was. Yeah, 2001, and that was.
It was a horrible experience. I mean, it was they followed you into the bathroom, right? The proctors. You weren't allowed to go to the bathroom by yourself.
I never made it to the bathroom. That's funny, but I did have to go to New York City, and from Philly. I remember it was a pain in the butt. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I took 4.5 hours, I think, for my CISSP. I was not the last one to leave the room. I was one of the last 4, but use your time. Don't rush. RTFQ, slow down, take that time. This is what we were just talking about. Don't sole source anything when it comes to study purposes. Look at the exam outline. It's free. You can go download the exam outline, go through each topic, go through each subtopic. Stand in front of a mirror, give a 5-minute lecture on each of the topics as if you were explaining it either to an 8-year-old kid or a 70-year-old parent. If you can't do that for a particular topic, put a check mark next to that topic. When you're done going through the outline, all the topics that you've checked, those are the ones you need to study. Those are the ones you need to focus on in your self-study. Definitely don't spend too much time studying the stuff you already know. That's not going to help you. All right. Finally, relax, good luck, and do great. So Larry shared with you the discount code for Wanna Practice. Wanna Practice is the interactive practice test app that we have. It is available for any device with a browser through wanapractice.com via the web, or it's available for Android in the Play Store. The Wannabia courseware is available at wannabiaCCSP.com. Anybody who comes from one of Larry's classes, I'll give you a significant discount on that. And I'll give Larry a kickback on that too for the referral. And
not necessary, but fine.
I want to wish you all luck. You are in the best hands that you could possibly be in for preparing for this thing, and make sure you take advantage of it. Don't just sit through the class like it was a video. Don't be passive. Pester Larry with as many questions as you possibly have. And then after the course is over, when you go and do your self-study to drill these into your mind, continue to pester him with emails, chats, LinkedIn messages. Make sure you're getting the full value out of squeeze Larry's brain like a brain grape and getting that juice out of there. And yes, he's going to be glad to help. He wants you to pass. It's important to him to have as many people pass as possible. That's a very good thing.
No better selling advertisement for me than a student who said, "Hey, I passed my exam and Larry helped."
That's absolutely true. Word of mouth is the biggest, most credible thing that we can possibly get. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to
come on,
answer.
guys, let's take advantage of him. He said he could hang out for another half hour. Is that still true?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So what do you guys got? Come on, ask some questions. Someone who credits Larry for passing schism. Oh, Larry's easy, very easy to annoy.
Are you saying he has a short temper, or are you saying he's very amenable to answering questions?
Oh, he answers messages all the time and on LinkedIn. No, not like he gets frustrated, but
okay, good. I wasn't sure.
Want.
I asked him a question, he flip out.
And Donna's saying you did the trick first time with CISSP. That's why he's a return customer. Outstanding, Don. That's great to hear.
Ben, I have a question for you guys. Because I know you've been around quite a bit. What are your thoughts on gathering multiple certifications essentially back to back? Because I know people that will get their CISSP and then they'll get their CISM.
We did a
CCSP.
podcast. We did a podcast episode about this like 3 months ago, and we came away with two minds on the subject. One is strike while the iron's hot. If you spend a year studying this crap, you might as well go and get the 4 certs that it fills in. Get your CCSK, get your CCSP, get your CISSP. Get them all together. However, the other perspective is there's such thing as a paper warrior. If you got a string of letters after your name, that doesn't mean you're good. It doesn't mean you're smart. Doesn't mean you know how to do the job. It means you know how to pass cert tests. So there's a point of diminishing returns. And I think what our conclusion was, and this is a group of, there were 4 of us talking about this. What our conclusion is, get the certs while you have the knowledge, while you've done all the studying, and then take a break from getting certs. And don't display all your certs on every resume you have. If you're applying for a particular job, use the certs that are applicable to that job. Don't string out an entire alphabet.
And maybe 2 or 3 tops.
Exactly.
When I see a guy with 7 certs, I'm like, so you're just a test taker.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. Yeah. Does that answer the question, Def?
Yes, thank you.
I had a similar in the 90s when the MCSE plus I. Do you remember that MCSE
I
plus
don't. The first time I jumped into it was with Microsoft's mouse certification, and then with Server 2000.
In the 90s, I worked for IBM, and they wanted us to be. We were a training center, and they wanted us to get certificates. It helped. And so MCSE was, I think, 7 tests, but because I was a CNE, I could eliminate 1, but then take 3 more tests, and you could become the plus I. So I had to do like SQL and Exchange and the Internet Explorer Administration Kit, the hardest test in the series.
Had never heard of a plus I. I thought MCSE was like the big deal. That was the glory crown.
But the funny thing was I was doing work for a trading firm, and my manager, we're still friends, still has yet to ever get a cert. And he's the best router guy I've ever met. And I remember coming in, I go, I got the plus I. And he just goes, do you do anything but take tests? Or should I just call you the master of multiple choice? And that stuck with me. The master of multiple choice.
I have the same problem. Every year I say, I'm done with certs. I have too many certs. There's no reason I should get another cert. And then somebody comes along with a new contract, or they say, we'd like you to teach this class. And then I have to go get the cert for that class or that contract.
Yeah, this guy just works for the end customer. He doesn't need it. I want to make sure I get this person to his question. You got a lot of risk management questions. They were all subjective, meaning there were multiple good answers. By the way, Ben, we've been using Chat and Bard to find when those things are subjective. You know, if it's like how many bits are in an IP address, there's one right answer. But it's like, what's the first thing you should do? And we see they're disagreeing. And the way those ISO tests work, so they're not actually percentage. If I've been involved where you have to QA a test, and if everyone thinks that answer is right, that answer counts a lot. If
Correct.
everyone thought it was wrong, then that answer just doesn't count as much, but you don't get partial credit for picking something else. All right, so I'm hoping to get more technical. And there was another one. Oh, okay, you're just saying it. You're just giving us a little background of it.
Suggestions on risk management questions. So let me ask you, Lolita, on the risk management questions, are they asking what is Larry's best approach in this situation, or are they asking what would you call this approach? Would this approach be mitigation? Would this be transfer? Would this be avoidance, or would this be acceptance? Can you give me a little more clarity on the?
I actually don't remember. I just remember getting a whole bunch of risk management questions and not really being sure of if the answer was the best answer. But I didn't, a lot of the things that I study, I didn't see at all. I just remember just seeing a whole bunch of risk management stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So my best advice for that is going to be the Luke Ahmed book. And again, it's for CISSP, not CCSP, but risk management's pretty much the same thing in both areas. And it's the mindset that I want you to walk away with more than any particular topic. Think like a manager is so important in risk management because, for instance, and this, you'll see this question all the time. This is like a classic question. If I have a server, and let's say, because it's CCSP, it's a cloud server. If I have a cloud server that has been penetrated by attackers and they're stealing $10,000 per day from my company through this server, what should I do? And this is a trick question. Does anybody know why this is a trick question? That's all I'm giving you right now. Why is that a trick question?
I feel bad.
Because you need to think, act, do, and you want to turn the server off, and maybe that's not the right answer.
Right. And Maksud's got it. And you're correct. How do you know what the cost benefit analysis is if I haven't told you the benefit? Let's say the server is bringing you revenue of $1 million per hour. If you lose $10,000 a day, does it matter? No. If it's $1 million revenue per hour, don't ever turn that server off. Keep that server going forever. Now, that's hard for us to do as security people because we see a security problem and say, fix it. But it's a management problem.
Think before you act. Think before you act.
If you take that server offline for 3 hours, you're losing $3 million to save $10,000 per day. How many days of having that thing be stolen from would have to be equivalent to 3 hours downtime? These are the kinds of ways you have to look at those risk management questions because thank you, Cliff. Don't make me do math. Thank you. Outstanding. 3,000 days. That's what? That's more than 10 years, right? So you have to read the question, understand what's being asked, then understand what each of the answers are offering you and see if there's any objectivity there. I know a lot of them are going to be subjective, but if there's any objectivity there that suggests what the correct answer might be from a business or management perspective. And that's my suggestion to you. There'll probably be one answer in there that is not necessarily technical. I would lean towards that one.
Yeah, whenever you're, I just find you're in a situation and something bad was reported. Three of the answers have you do something. One of them has you think before you do it. And that's probably the answer. Do an impact analysis, confirm the incident.
Or ask senior management. That's usually the right answer. Yeah, yeah. Does any of them mention health and human safety? That's the right answer. That's yeah. I'm with you 100%. Other questions?
Yeah, what else you guys got? Let's pick his brain.
In that same scenario, if there was a security related issue, would you still have the same? Would you still decide to leave the server on, or would you do another type of assessment to determine whether to turn the server off, even if it's giving you $1 million an hour?
Well, I didn't mean to jump in, but I'm thinking there might be a legal requirement because even though it's not just dollars, there's you think that it might violate a regulatory requirement or some service level agreement. So, but other than that,
yeah, unless the law says if you're losing $10,000 a day, you must shut down the server. And short of the law stating that, why would you do that to yourself? You'd be cutting off your arm to save a fingernail.
Actually, it reminds me of a real case that Bruce Schneier illustrated in fraud of that at the time of the talk, 2001, 2002. Visa and MasterCard accept that up to 2% of their money is fraudulently used, and they don't even investigate.
Don't care.
They don't bother.
It costs them more to drill down on that crap than it would to be just say that's the cost of doing business, right?
Right. It's the cost. They said their trigger was 3%.
Absolutely. And you see that at the grocery store. At the grocery store, they don't have any shoplifting controls. They've started to add them in the pharmacy, like you'll see it on certain things like deodorant, the small, portable, high value stuff. But usually in the grocery store, they don't have locks on the grapes. They don't have, a lot of cameras. They don't have a lot of armed guards. They understand that a certain amount of shoplifting is going to be a cost of doing business. So they absorb that loss. They roll it into the price that they charge to legitimate customers, and they go on with their day. Because if you try to arrest someone stealing a cantaloupe, and then try to prosecute them, what are you going to end up doing? You're not going to recover your damages. You're not going to get back the cost. It's going to cost you more to go to court and to have your manager show up as a witness that day than you're ever going to get in stopping the trespasser or the shoplifter, right? So
actually, in Philadelphia, and I was made aware of the law. I don't know recently that they're not to stop you for shoplifting because it's too dangerous.
Walmart made that policy. They said anything under $1,000, let them go, because we don't want to put anybody at risk of health and human safety. It's bizarre.
When I was a kid, it was a little different. They'd follow you around. Why is that kid by himself in the store? Just keep walking wherever he goes. I saw you take a cookie.
And any random adult could grab you by the arm and drag you, and then call your parents and the cops. And yeah. Not that I ever suffered that. Lolita, did that answer your question?
Luke Ahmed, think like a manager. Let's get his little thing. In fact, I got an autograph copy. Think like a manager by Luke Ahmed.
Any other questions? Hit me. Inundate us.
How much hands-on cloud experience do you actually need before you start studying and attempting the exam?
None. Let me put it this way, minimal. I was not Azure certified. I was not AWS certified when I went and took the exam. I had very little exposure to any administrative capabilities in a cloud or distributed environment. So don't focus on that. You should not be asked provider specific questions. This should be vendor agnostic, as all ISC squared tests should be. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to have some experience and knowing what some of the technologies mean, like security groups, containers, microservices. Those things are important to understand, but not quite going into depth there. Larry, sorry.
There was a version of the exam earlier that I brought up in my class because my wife works with these things that mentioned Puppet and Chef for infrastructure management tools.
Yeah,
and she's like, everybody
yeah.
uses it. Well, she said nobody even uses them. You use Ansible today.
Yeah.
So are they specifically mentioned on the exam?
Those were in the exam outline for some reason in a parenthetical in the version prior to 2021. I want to say it was the 2019 or 2017 version. Okay. They actually mentioned those. So that would be the only reason it would show up there. And that was, again, that was an accident of somebody who shouldn't have written that into the outline.
Okay, thank you. Because I was blown away by that. I was like, really? You're going to ask me tool names?
And have you seen that on the current CIS? For the past two versions of the CISSP outline, they've mentioned Zigbee. I don't know why. I don't know who put that in there.
Zigbee is a technology, though, right? Isn't it? Yeah.
But it gets really close to being proprietary, and it's. For what I'm saying is that they picked some flavors that just are a little too specific. But yeah,
yet I don't see Wireshark, my favorite tool. Bob is using Wireshark.
Yep. Is it worth the same as CISSP in terms of notoriety or in terms of salary? Cliff already says salary is the same. Here's what I think the real worth is. DOD, what's the reg?
8570.
8570 has the list in the matrix of which certs are equivalent to which level of position within the military in terms of technical positions. And because it comes from DOD, all military contractors have accepted that as sort of the stratification of what each cert means, how prominent it is. And because all the military contractors have taken that, well, all the other contractors have taken that as well. Yes, yeah. And yeah, as Def said, the salary data is janky. The salary data is from self-reporting. So I don't know why they even consider that as being useful as a metric. I would say go with the fact that 8570 includes CISM, CCSP, and CISSP all at the same level. They're all at the same highest level strata. So that's the important way you should look at it. If you're trying to determine whether you should get CCSP or CISSP, either one of them will be sufficient. There might be a cloud administrator job or a cloud security job that specifically wants you to have CCSP. Okay, go get it. But other than that, either one of them will suit the purpose. CCSP is on the list. Yeah, there was some question about they had changed the color of CCSP on the list, and people were starting to freak out if that meant that it was going to be a different rating. But no, it is part of it. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Good. Other questions? Thank you. Yeah, Def's got it.
So it's technical level 3.
3, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Anything else?
Come on, just utilize his last 12 minutes. Don't let him out early.
If I'm the thing standing between them and lunch, please go have lunch. That's
we'll
okay.
Take it. We've done my slides the way I wanted to do it this week. Rather than present and do practice questions, I knocked out the slides in the first 3 days. I'm constantly.
And now it's going to be all practice questions.
Yeah, and it's all practice, so it's not quite the same. Changes my recordings because I don't have the license to record your previous guy or the other guy Chapel stuff, so they're not getting that. All right. Definitely not a CSP. I'll find out your name in LinkedIn here.
He wears a mask like Luke, right? Hey, thank you all. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you to Larry for having me. If any of y'all have any questions, hit me up.
What's the best email address they should share with you? They could reach out to you.
Yeah, let me do that. We don't know when the next version is.
Well,
CISSP just got updated. CISSP will be 15th of April 2024. I'm guessing CCSP will be the year following. That's my
Yeah,
guess.
it's usually it has to be 3 years for the ANSI 17024. So I wasn't sure if the 2022 update counted. Does that count as their official update? I think it did because the last one was 18.
Yeah, 2022 was. Now they've
Unofficial.
sometimes done it within 2 years, and sometimes they've waited 4 to 5, simply because things like COVID and some other things slowed them down. But they try to do every 3 years.
It looks nothing like you. I
Which
saw a
picture?
picture of you in Amazon and you were with a dog. You were with a woman and a dog.
Yes, that's my girlfriend Robin. She co-founded the podcast with me, but now she has better things to do.
And the dog?
Which,
Tell me about your dog. I'm a big animal lover.
now which picture was it? Was it a yellow dog? Or was it the little mop fluffy looking one? Because I know we've had two different questions there.
I can't see.
And which question on my site? The one with me in a sport coat? That's because I shaved. I mean, oh yeah, that's our current dog. She's an Aussie Doodle. She's a maniac, and we love her.
I don't see the picture. Where's the picture?
It's in my little icon there. It's the icon.
Oh, there it is. Yeah,
Right there,
that one. Yeah,
yeah.
that's where I was trying to find it.
Yeah, she's learning to be a good dog, but it's taken some time.
How
I'll
old?
see if she's awake. Come here, pup. Come here. Yes, come on up. She naps while I teach. Come on up. Come on. Yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh, come on. Oh yes, that's her. All right. Good. So yeah, hit me up with email. Connect with me via
puppy.
LinkedIn. Lolita, I will connect with you shortly. And good luck to everyone. Please do very well. Let Larry know how you do. That's the best kind of feedback. Without violating test security, give him feedback on what parts of his course helped and what he can improve. Very, very useful.
Yeah, it's just stuff like you should do more on whatever block storage or something like that. Not I got a question that said this.
Correct.
But when I talk about the dogs, one of my favorite authors I've been promoting around here in AI, and as I'm a very hopeful person, not worried about the wanting to turn us into paper clips. Kate Darling is so brilliant. She's a roboticist, and it talks about how we've been dealing with autonomous vehicles and autonomous things for a long time that go out of control. We lose control. The earliest writings that we can go back 5,000 years old are things like we stored the grain here. It came from there. And on the way there, your ox gorged my guy and we're suing you. And they're all ox gorges. And she goes over, I mean, we've been domesticated, like dogs were first 30,000 years ago, horses. In the 90s, we were still using ferrets to clean out cyclotrons at CERN. We were constantly domesticated bees, and it's just amazing how the lessons we get from this, we don't always, or it could go out of control. They go out of control all the time. I had a friend had to pay people a couple times because his dog, our president's dog has bitten Secret Service agents.
Well, if you were the president's dog, wouldn't you be in a really bad mood all the time too? Now, with that said, the nice part about the dog and about the other biological sentience is that there's always going to be some aspect of chaos in there. I'm hoping that with AI, we can minimize the chaos because at least we know the lines of code that we put into it. We should have, if we can get Asimov's.
I don't think I think you missed something.
If we get Asimov's 3 rules implemented,
it's never going to work. No, and
I'll be okay
she
with
covers
that.
him. She covers Asimov all the way. She said no serious roboticist really thinks ever that those rules could ever work because they're going to be smarter than us. But the part about us putting the rules, that's already from 2019 on not true, because AIs now talk to each other in languages we don't understand. The first case we measured this was AlphaGo beats Lisa Dahl in the
but
game
the nice
of Go.
part is we can turn them off still.
Oh, they're cloud-based. Try turning off Configure.
Good point. Good point. And I'll leave you with that. Ladies and gentlemen, good luck on the exam. Enjoy the rest of your class. And again, Larry, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, guys, we're going to take a break. Let me stop the recording here.